So is Korea-Japan relations different?
Very. We embrace Japan as a cooperative partner rather than objective antagonism or conflict.
The late Winston Churchill said diplomacy is the art of telling people to go to hell in a way that they will ask for directions. Today, in a world full of conflicts and complexities, that art is a rare and precious commodity, especially for a country like Korea. To hone such skills, all newly minted Korean diplomats go through rigorous training at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Today's Globalist is its newly appointed head, Dr. Chul-hee, who is himself Korea's leading political scientist and expert in diplomacy, especially pertaining to Japan. We talk about Korea's diplomatic challenges and what diplomats can do to help. So, Chancellor Park, welcome to the Globalist.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be recognized as one of the globalists.
We're very glad that you're here. Let's start off with the fact that it's been a really busy time for diplomats right now. We've had summits, South Korea with the US, Japan, the G7 countries, even Ukraine. When you look at all these summits and all the diplomatic efforts that are being done right now, how do you rate it overall?
First of all, as you said, that was a super summit week. President Yoon had summit meetings with the 12 leaders, global leaders, which is unusual. So the simple fact that he was invited to the G7 summit means that South Korea is recognized as one of the advanced democracies and then global trading country that can cope with global issues together with other global leaders. And then they had the summit meetings 12 times.
Yes.
Many cases, of course, we wanted to meet the other political leaders, but at the same time, many of them wanted to meet President Yoon. And they also wanted to come to Korea. And I found several leaders go to demilitarized zone to see what the situation is like in Korea. Oh, this country is a divided nation that confronts North Korea, but at the same time, it's just so globalized, so dynamically economic country. So they wanted to witness what Korea is like. And they recognized, oh, Korea can address global issues together with them. That's a kind of a major achievement.
So from a diplomatic point of view, those kind of recognition that the global world is giving to Korea is wonderful. I mean, but from a diplomatic point of view, I think the challenge becomes, what do you do with all of this interest and recognition that Korea is getting?
So I think one of the kind of critical turn that we have made after Yoon administration came in is that rather than simply mired into a Korean peninsula issue only, we have to go global. Of course, North Korea issue and peninsula issue is very important for us. We can never get away from that problem. But at the same time, we have the capability, we have a global status, so we have to deal with all the regional and global issues at the same time. And this time, critically, what they say, the Office of President announced that we made a concrete contribution to the ABC area. ABC means A, agricultural. So expanding our aid to the developing countries in the food aid. So we doubled our aid to the World Food Program, and then decided to increase our aid to the ASEAN plus 3 countries. And then B is bio.
Bio.
It's a kind of producing more vaccines for the pandemic, and then distribute it globally, and then try to facilitate the system of the transporting all those vaccines to the global south. C is climate. So join the climate club, and then confirms that we are trying to contribute to the climate change and environment more proactively than before. So we made a concrete suggestion rather than just, we are trying to do something related global, but it was very specific, less related to the security issues, but more civilizational issues.
So very specifically areas in which Korea can make a contribution globally, and it feels that it should, and actually participate in resolving these issues, not just helping or not just funding. I mean, is this something that Korea has not tried before?
We did in the past. Actually, during the Lee Myung-bak administration, the whole catchphrase of diplomacy was global Korea. From that time on, Korea tried to contribute more to the global society and then much more civilizational issues. But somehow, we have reduced our diplomatic scope to the Northeast Asia, which is not necessarily desirable for a country like Korea that can contribute more to the international society. The global issues like climate change, environment, energy, all this, the pandemic, those are the issues that we have lots of competitiveness to contribute, and then capabilities to do it. But somehow, South Korea was recognized as a country that only keeps a strong interest on the Korean Peninsula. So we wanted to go beyond that and try to be a globalist as a country.
Yes, globalist as a country.
Yes.
Good phrase. So you're talking about Korea now expanding its sphere of activities and influence beyond the Korean Peninsula, beyond Northeast Asia, Asia as a whole. We've seen it when President Yoon had his summit with the Ukraine president, talking about Korea's support for the Ukraine, the demining vehicles and stuff like that.
Ukrainian people.
We are always thankful for your matter of principle, your position of principle that condemning.
On the other hand, when people may think, from Korea, what does a war in Europe have to do with us?
First of all, Ukraine issue is not a kind of the fire on the other side of the bank. That's our own problem, especially country like South Korea that experienced the Korean War in 1950. The situation is not exactly the same, but very similar in a sense that Russia invaded Ukraine against the UN Charter and the international norms. Russia is a nuclear-armed great power, and Ukraine is a non-nuclear, relatively weaker country. So the bigger country tried to invade a smaller country and try to take its territory, which violates the international rules of the game. So I don't think any country in the world can recognize it as a fait accompli and then, we acknowledge it. Especially a country like South Korea, we cannot accept it because it's not an issue of others. It can happen on the Korean Peninsula at the same time in the future. So we try to fully understand the situation and then try to help Ukraine in order to bring back the peace in that region, and then also try to bring peace to the people in the country. So that's the reason why we expressed our strong will to participate in efforts to reconstruct the country if the war ends.
And you talked about the fact that South Korea was much more involved in that G7 process than before. Is the G7 evolving into something that is more substantial in the global market? And could South Korea and even countries like Australia be a part of a future G7 or whatever number it wants to be?
There's some kind of rumors and hearsays about whether G7 can be expanded further in the future. That possibility comes up because Russia was included as a G8, but Russia is out now. And then G7 is a member of countries in the world that has a status of advanced democracies and global economy, and then have a global policy posture. So in that sense, some countries might be named as a candidates for potential expansion. In that sense, I think the country like South Korea or Australia can be named up at any time because they share that quality. So advanced democracies and then market economy and then global posture and then in respect for human rights and then all the global values and follow the rules of the game. So in that sense, I think Korea is well qualified to do that.
So it's becoming more, of course, the advanced economies, but advanced economies that are like-minded, that share values.
Exactly.
And so that means that it could involve more countries.
Right. So, but possibly Korea may be named in the future. But so if Korea is invited, we have no reason to say no.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do not have to hurry up too much.
I mean, we're talking all these groupings. We know that G20, because of now, it's hard to get anything done at a G20 level right now. So we're turning to the G7 and thinking about how this group of like-minded, but we're also seeing regional security cooperatives like Quad and AUKUS. Is this how global, diplomatic efforts are going to be? I mean, are everyone going to be in small groupings to deal with global issues?
I think if you look at the kind of international order unfolding around us these days, two premises that worked in the past, they are not working neatly. One is a kind of the American hegemony, as a kind of single country, work like a kind of a global policeman and then try to rule and then control and coordinate many things. America is still the most important and most strongest country in the world, but he cannot coordinate everything on top. And then the multilateralism, that is almost broken. It's there, but it's not efficiently working, including WTO and others. So the issue of economic security attests to the case that multilateralism should be reserved and respected, but in reality, it's not. So the countries began developing a minilateralism or what I call midlateralism.
Okay.
So instead of the multilateralism. So many things will be going together rather than just a single order dominates everything.
So much more work for diplomats to do.
Yeah, much more.
Work.
Complicated and complex.
Does that mean we need more diplomats?
Exactly.
Are we getting to that point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Human resources.
Of course. Yeah.
We need
diplomatic activities are basically human activities, and that hasn't been replaced by robots yet, I think.
We have very able, competent human resources. Of course, the civilian sectors are working very well. I think the multinational Korean companies, private companies are doing a lot, but they are doing for their benefits. But for the country, I think we'd better increase the budget of the foreign ministry and increase the diplomats a little bit more than now. I don't think we will expend too much, but we have to expand it anyway.
Yes, definitely. Especially if, when we think about the world that we face today.
Yes.
私自身当時厳しい環境の下で多数の方々が大変苦しいそして悲しい思いをされたことに心が痛む思いです。
우리 두 사람은 한일 미래 세대의 교류 확대를 위해 많은 관심을 기울이고 필요한 일을 계속할 것입니다.
Now, let's turn to your area of expertise, Japan. Now, Korea and Japan have recently made huge strides. They've had summits, more than one now, in the past 2 months?
3 months.
3 months.
They met the three times in 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
So it is quite extraordinary. But you, as a Japan expert, have seen Korea-Japan relations go up and down, many, many times.
Right.
So is this instance different?
Very. We have changed the whole mindset and perspective. First of all, considering the kind of a very severe international environment, we have to embrace Japan as a cooperative partner rather than objective antagonism or conflict for our own interest. Second, rather than just kind of preoccupied with history issues too much, we have to develop a future-oriented relationship for the future generation. So of course, that does not mean that history is nothing. History is important, but we should not be bound by history too much. So President Yoon made a big resolution. We take the initiative. We go first. We show goodwills. And then see whether Japan can respond to us. I had some anxiety, but that worked. Prime Minister Kishida also reciprocated. Of course, by high standard, that's set by the Korean people, but it doesn't mean...
People think it's not enough,
right.
of course.
Not enough, but the Prime Minister Kishida tried to respond to our request. When he made a visit to Seoul on May 7th, that was possible because Prime Minister Kishida made a political resolution on his own. He suggested the idea of paying respect to the monument for the Korean nuclear victims in Hiroshima. That's his home district.
Yeah.
So
and they did.
They did. So it's a kind of showing his goodwill by action.
Was he the first Japanese prime minister to visit the national assembly, pay his respect?
Japanese Prime Minister Obuchi, he paid a visit in 1999 alone. But this was the first visit by Korean president and Japanese prime minister together. That was another first time.
Okay. So they went together.
They went together. So that's meaningful.
Yeah.
Because many people do not know that monument, but that monument was erected in 1970 by the donations of the Korean Japanese. And then it had 29 years of struggle to bring into the Peace Park.
That's in Hiroshima.
Yeah, Hiroshima Peace Park. It was outside of the park. And then after 29 years of struggle, it was brought in 1999. And then, but still, people did not often go there. But this time, finally, Japanese Prime Minister and Korean President recognized the importance of paying respect for the victims.
Now, these are all good signals. But we have seen, when it seemed to be good signals, we seem to take 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, and then something happens and you take 3 steps back, and we seem to be in a place that is even worse than where we started. Do you see a possibility of that happening right now?
That's what many Japanese intellectuals and political leaders are worried about. What if after another 4 years, the different political regime comes in and then reverse the whole consensus or achievement? First of all, under the Yoon administration, there is a guarantee that it will never be trampled or destabilized because President Yoon has a strong belief and the will to improve the relationship. Why? That serves the interest of Korea. And then, if we are worried about that kind of a situation that may be destabilized in the future, I think Korea and Japan should make a kind of joint efforts not to see that kind of situation and work together to consolidate the cooperative movement and then try to make up whatever deficiencies we may have. Right? And I have some kind of hope, especially when you think about the younger generations in both societies. Right? People, the youngsters in their 20s and 30s, they have a very favorable feelings toward each other. They enjoy mutual culture a lot. And then they regard the other party as an equal partner, not as a hierarchical manner. So I think we have a hope. So that's why we always empathize that we have to construct and reconstruct the relationship between Korea and Japan for the future generation.
So to really form networks, to really form relationships.
Yes.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I hope it goes well. I mean, I don't know many Koreans who the Japanese trust more to talk about Korea, and Koreans actually trust to talk about Japan than you.
Thank you.
Well, one thing that does help you is that, you speak fluent English, but you also speak fluent Japanese.
That's what they say.
Yeah, but nothing in your resume says to the fact that how does he speak fluent Japanese? How do you speak fluent Japanese? Or what they say is fluent Japanese.
I learned it. I practiced it a lot. Very interesting. I learned the Japanese in Korea, but at the same time in the United States when I studied at Columbia University. So kind of a spoken English.
Really?
Yeah, I learned again. But the very things that I did research about Japanese politics. First, the kind of people I meet to have an interview, Japanese politicians. So I rerun again in the sense that I use the old honorific expressions rather than just the banmal.
So your elders,
Yeah,
you know how to talk to your elders.
Respectful and then very important people. So
which is important in Japanese.
Very important because it's a Confucian society, and in East Asia, the seniority matters, and then power matters, authority matters. So I fully respect it, and have developed a very good habit of developing speaking to them very modestly and distantly rather than wildly. That works.
You must have a very linguistic brain. So, I mean, that obviously helps. But, at your academy, talking about diplomats, I mean, of course, language is a very important thing because that is sort of the medium in which you use in your work. But what is an important asset? What is important for a diplomat to know and understand when he does his work?
Okay, of course, they have to acquire some practical skills and then some issue areas, but most important is what kind of values they have to protect and preserve and promote in a global society. I think how to promote the South Korea's identity as a free nation and trading nation and then globally committed country. For whom? For our own people. I think that value-oriented training is very important because what you do when you conduct diplomacy, that's all for the country and people, right? So, and then the second thing I wanted to bring in is a kind of a globalist mindset. We are not a small country. We are not a shrimp anymore. So some people say Korea is even a whale now. So you have to know how to navigate through all this global world, acquiring all this global mindset, rather than, I'm a kind of the diplomat representing a small country in Northeast Asia. I think we are beyond that.
That's a difficult one. When those diplomats go out into the world, what kind of diplomats do you want them to be? Of course, the ones that know the value of Korea, love their country, and are able to assert themselves. But, we talk about, China's assertive diplomats and call them the wolf warrior diplomats. We don't want Korea to be wolf warrior diplomats. What do we want them to be?
I think we have to have our own agenda. I hope our diplomacy should be equipped with several qualities. One is agility. agile diplomacy.
Agile.
Very
Very
speedy,
flexible.
and then wisely designing many things, because we don't have that much big resources. And we have to have a much more competence. Confidence plus capability is a kind of the competent diplomacy is what we need. We have to develop lots of skills and then wisdoms in the future, but I have a great confidence in our younger generation. While teaching at Seoul National University, I look at all this younger generation, wow, we have a hope. We have to utilize them. We have to take advantage of their confidence and capability for the nation. What blocks them is politics, leaders.
Yes.
So
the older generation.
older generation, our generation should be much more responsible to change the course and then let them play out their potentials for our future of our nation, for the globe. So whether we can do it or not, that depends on us.
Yes.
Not them.
Well, yes. Let's hope that, you as the head of the academy will be able to nurture
Right.
such global diplomats and global leaders.
I will keep that in mind and then try to grow them up as a true globalist.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on the show. And that's it for me. I'll be back next week with another globalist who is putting Korea on the map. Sun Ji-ae out.